Today we're going to be talking about night flying. You could say the difference is day and night. Night flying is important to a student for really two main reasons. The first one is you want to be proficient at this skill so that you can take people flying with you at night. If I never learned how to do it well, then I'm not going to be safe when I go do it after passing my check ride and getting the certificate. Or I'll have limited privileges. You know, my license is good to fly day and night and I don't feel comfortable flying at night. The second really important piece of night flying for students is you're not eligible for a check ride or to become a licensed pilot until you've completed night training. So the check ride requires 3 hours minimum of night training and a couple of sub requirements. You have to go on a cross country over 100 nautical miles. So usually we fly to an airport, you know, maybe 50, 60 miles away and fly home. And you also have to go on 10 takeoffs and landings at night with your instructor. And of course, we want to make sure that you're actually proficient at the skill. You didn't just do 10 and you really still are bad at night landings, right? It's a little different flying with the reduced visual perception and seeing the lighting and other markings at airports at night. It's just a little bit different. You know, if you think about driving a car, if you've never driven a car at night before you get your license, you're not going to be the best night driver, right? There's just a few things that change your depth perception and other pieces. The difference between flying in daytime and nighttime, I would say, is pretty stark when you're at the private pilot level. It's really awesome and exciting and neat to go night flying for the first time, but I would say you do see quite a bit of difference in skill. On daytime flying, a student might be really proficient at the takeoffs and landings, and at nighttime, there's definitely some work to be done when they're first getting introduced to it. So overall, I mean, you do all the same things. I still operate the airplane the same way, I'm still landing on the same runway, I'm still gonna approach it similar altitudes I do in the daytime. Most of the rules and procedures there didn't actually change on controlling or flying the airplane, but what really changes your body. Your eyes and how they work at nighttime is completely different than in the daytime, and so that's usually where we have to train students to overlook certain things or change their references.
The thing I was most worried about during my night flight was I got like a sensation of like I wasn't able to see far. During the day, like visibility, like if it's 10 statute miles or whatever, I mean, you can see the horizon pretty far, but I think at night flight, I mean, it's a really weird sensation, like not being able to see right in front of you. And I mean, I can see all the lights and stuff like on cities that I would pass, but it was a very weird feeling and I'd have to trust my instruments a lot more. It was very scary. It's not like driving a car at night, for sure.
The thing that I was worried about the most for my night flight was just finding the destination airport. I had never done that before, so day flying versus night flying is just trying to actually just find your destination, just looking for the lights of the airport, what flashes you're looking for from the beacon. What saves me is finding the blue omnidirectional lights on the taxiways. I feel like that's a pretty clear indicator of where the taxiway is, and obviously the runway is just going to be on the other side of it, so that's something that helped me out.
Typically in our Zero to Airline program, we do the night flying in either 1 or 2 sessions. So the student will meet with their instructor, usually just as the sun is setting. They might do the pre-flight while it's still daylight and then be able to go discuss how the night vision is going to change, how to pre-flight an airplane after dark if you weren't able to come before the sunset, and just some of the pre-flight briefings we do before a student's very first night flight. And then they'll go out and do the cross-country flight and do the landings. And like I said, that could either be combined in one session or 2 different lessons where we get the 3 hours required minimum.
The most exciting thing about night flying was definitely seeing the lights, like going on like cities and being able to see like downtown Dallas, downtown Fort Worth and stuff off in the horizon. It's just a different view that you never get to see often. When you're in an airliner, I mean, sitting at like 20,000 feet, you can't really see anything. But like when you're cruising 2,000 feet in Addison, you got all these lights under you, like it's the coolest thing in the world.
The thing that I recalled most during my flight was just actually flying over Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, just seeing all the different terminals and runways and taxiways at night. The only time I've ever seen it before is coming in bound as a passenger on an airliner, but actually being a pilot flying over it for the first time, definitely surreal, something different. And I actually really enjoyed it.
So really common mistakes from students often come with the landings because everything looks just a little different than it did during the daytime. Really commonly, students will come in for the landing and flare too high. When you have your night light on, that's about as far as you can see, right? The rest of the runway is not as illuminated or as bright as it is in your landing light's purview, right? Beyond that, it looks pretty dark. So that's generally where students' eyes will focus, is right where their landing light is shining. Where in the daytime, we've trained them to look way further down the runway, and it causes some illusions as they come in for the landing and the flare. Usually they end up flaring too high, misjudging their height.
I'd say for someone who's about to do their first night flight is don't be intimidated, for sure. Trust your instruments, and it's okay to feel like super disoriented because I know you're used to flying during the day. Don't give up trying to find the airport because it's much more of a challenge than you think. So if your GPS says you're 4 miles out, I think that was like the thing that I did. We learned it all on the ground, but when you look at lights, if you try and have like the center of your view onto a light, it's much harder to see it at night. So use like a lot of off-center viewing. Like we can cover that like all the time in ground, but actually applying it is different. So definitely off-center viewing, and be okay with not seeing 100% of the runway the whole time. It's okay, just trust your VASI lights.
I think I would have studied the taxiway diagrams better for the airport that I was flying to, just knowing which directions each runway were going, memorizing that, because at the airport that I was going to, they had 3 different runways all intersecting each other in like a X almost. So just knowing right off the bat in my head, the taxiway diagram in my head, had it planned out, it really would have helped me a lot more if I had done that.
What I usually look for when doing the night landing, right, is I try and remember I am prone to this error of only looking where my landing light is and looking intentionally beyond it. So I try and use the runway lighting down the side of the runway and draw my eye outwards so that I can still look at the horizon. We try and focus more with our peripheral vision than our straight ahead vision at nighttime, which is really helpful because that's where the night lights are located. And I just have to remember, right, my eyes are working differently now, and to use these outside sources. Another tip that I'll give students is, yes, we can see the paint for the runway, your landing light is shining on it, but you're actually still higher than you think you are often when they're transitioning from daytime to nighttime flying. So let's wait until you can see the tire marks on the paint, or like the skid marks from previous landings essentially. And that helps them judge the height a little bit more accurately. When you're flying with an instructor, obviously there's some things they can do to help, right? They could read the altitude out for you verbally, you know, we're at 50 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet. But in general, it's just training your eye to look further down and trying to rely more heavily on the peripheral vision to judge that altitude and sink rate. But the more practice, better you get.